I'm going to tell you who Harry Potter should have ended up with if it wasn't Ginny. And I promise it is not who you're thinking.
The Belated Binge Podcast.
First of all, Book Ginny's a great character and has a lot of strengths. She also seems to be a great match for Harry, even if much of that takes place off the page. But no matter how great they seem like they could be together, there's always going to be two fundamental flaws in Harry and Ginny being romantically involved. One is hero worship, and two is bro code. No matter where the story goes, you're never going to be able to remove how Ginny was introduced to our story. From begging her mom to let her get a look at him on the train when she finds out who it was, to talking about him all summer between her first and second year, to not being able to speak around him, trying to get his attention with that Valentine's Day card. She was very, very young, but still, this is her introduction. And also, he literally saved her life in the Chamber of Secrets. There were, of course, some small moments later as well, like looking sad when she already had a date to the Yule Ball when she could have gone with him, and lots of little subtle things. But ultimately, one of the biggest hurdles to their relationship is that she never became her own character until Hermione told her to get over him. And then once they were actually together, she still told him that she never really gave up on him. This creates an imbalance in their relationship from day one, like literal day one, where one person has been invested her entire life, and he didn't even think about it until much later on. Plus, he, again, literally saved her life, so that's also kind of uneven. She becomes a character that's theoretically a great fit for him in how she turns out to be a highly independent, capable, and even a sarcastic partner that can bring him down a peg when she needs to. She's great, but as great as she can't erase how it started. It also can't erase bro code. And this isn't a sexist opinion. It's not possessive. It's not even about gender. Almost everyone in the world has their version of bro code with someone in their life. Bro code is simply a bond, a relationship between you and another person that you value more than your relationship with any other people. When you value this relationship more than others, you actively avoid situations that could have the opportunity to harm that bond. This includes other relationships, romantic or otherwise. And Harry shows his commitment to Ron throughout the entire series, and it begins almost immediately when he refuses Draco's friendship for the way that he treats Ron on the train. Harry even exemplifies this in all of his intimate moments on the page with Ginny. You can see it because those moments are more about Ron for him than Ginny. Let's do the math. When he first starts having feelings for Ginny, he tries to convince himself he doesn't, because of Ron. In their first kiss, she's the one that initiates, and he immediately tries to find Ron in the crowd to see if he's upset. In that fun moment in the common room when she's joking around with them, their little foursome around the, well, that sounds weird, but they're all on the couch together, and she's joking about what she told the other girls his hidden tattoo is. What does Harry ask? What did you tell him Ron had? And of course, the birthday scene, the one you knew we were going to get to, when she calls him into her bedroom where she's clearly planning to be the present he unwraps, and Ron interrupts, and Harry immediately defers to Ron's emotion over anyone else's. Side note, this is actually a growth moment for Ron. While it plays as protective or even overzealous big brother energy, it's a completely different interaction than when we'd seen it from him before. Think of when he catches Ginny and Dean making out in that abandoned corridor. He lashes out at Ginny, and how he doesn't want the whole school to think his sister is, let's say, easy. I'm paraphrasing. But this scene, he doesn't blame Ginny. He's upset with Harry. And not that Harry's kissing Ginny, but specifically that Harry had broken up with Ginny. His problem isn't their relationship. It's that he doesn't want his sister hurt, and he feels that Harry is just leading her on and playing with her emotions, which is going to de facto mean she's going to keep getting hurt. It's a similar moment, and his anger seems kind of petty and misplaced each time, but the root of that anger is significantly more mature that final time around. And that's also exactly why Harry, in his true character, in my opinion, wouldn't go after Ginny to begin with. He values his relationship with Ron before all others, even, I think, before Hermione's. And no matter what he feels for Ginny, it will always put Ron in a position that could jeopardize their friendship. It's similar to the Fast and the Furious when Dominic Toretto and Brian O'Connor are becoming friends. Brian's going to take Dom's sister out on a date, and he has to say, "You break her heart, I'll break your neck." Literally telling him, "We're friends, but that's my sister, and I'm always going to care about what happens to her and never want her to feel hurt, even if it's you, friend." Ron is always going to have this same dilemma if Harry and Ginny are together. No matter what, there's always going to be a chance that it doesn't work out, or Harry upsets her or breaks her heart, and Ron will always have to deal with his love for his sister and not wanting to see her feel any pain, and the possibility or reality that that pain is caused by his best friend. Harry, at his core, wouldn't do that to Ron. He proves it throughout the series that every choice he makes that could possibly impact Ron, he makes in favor of Ron's feelings. All except Ginny, which I understand if you think that feels out of character, because it is. So let's explore who else Harry could have, or perhaps should have, ended up with if it wasn't Ginny. And there's a few names that I believe most people will come up with pretty quickly, if not immediately. And I guarantee my choice is not going to be one of them. So before we get to my choice, let's talk about the ones you're probably already thinking about. Let's start with the one that might have been your first thought, Hermione. If it was, I can't blame you, and the traditional hero journey would agree with you. There's a version of this story that could have been written where they were the obvious pairing, and I'd honestly be in favor. But as it stands, with the words that are on the page, it would have taken some serious retconning to make it a reality. You could argue some moments from book one with the teasing and things of that nature, but I say at least as far back as book two, the groundwork for Ron having feelings for Hermione was already being laid. The moment that stands out in my mind is when Hermione gets petrified, and Ron is described in his reaction and how intently and emotionally he is with her in the hospital wing. It wasn't the same as what Harry was doing in this same moment with his other best friend. There seemed to be something different in the way that Ron was feeling about seeing Hermione that way. And then, of course, you've got the stuff that other people have pointed out for literally years, the attentiveness that he pays to Hermione vanishing and reappearing during Prisoner of Azkaban. You've got the Yule Ball disaster in the Goblet of Fire, and we know their arc. And in my opinion, you'd have to rewrite that whole entire story if Harry was to end up with Hermione. Because the moment that you set up Ron having feelings for Hermione, that bro code I mentioned earlier makes her off limits in Harry's mind. Again, it's not possessively by Ron. It's not like Ron called dibs, but it's because Harry cares so much for his relationship with Ron, swooping in and getting with the girl that Ron wants to be with. It's a non-starter, even if she is actually a better complementary partner for Harry than she is for Ron, which might be true. Let's get another name out of the way because it obviously was not going to work, and that's Cho Chang. She's a worthwhile character. She's a pretty girl. She serves as a very, very necessary failed relationship for Harry before he gets to anything that actually works. After all, you already have all your main characters marrying the person they got with in high school, so they each had to at least be with someone else first, right? That seemed to be the formula. Hermione had Victor Crumb, Ron had Lavender Brown, and Harry had Cho. But even if these two actually had chemistry, or that chemistry jumped off the page, it wouldn't really matter. You can't have Harry spend an entire book working up the courage to ask her out, getting turned down because she's with someone else, hating that other dude for getting to her first, and then having that dude murdered in front of his very eyes, and then just casually hook up with the girl after he's dead. That was never gonna work. It's the wrong kind of shared trauma because they're sharing the trauma of her ex-boyfriend he watched get murdered. This is another one I'm going to get out of the way too. Draco Malfoy. Now, I am not of the opinion that the only possible option for Harry is a heterosexual relationship. But I also don't get the Draco thing like I know a lot of other people do. I think there is a genuine dislike and borderline hatred between these two characters. There are visceral scenes of both physical, verbal, and psychological just assaults that could not be overcome to achieve any semblance of a healthy romantic relationship. You can't cite why you so obsessed with me part of their arc if you can't remove the constant verbal abuse from Malfoy regarding Harry's dead parents, or the physical attacks that actually took place, or Draco's hand in Dumbledore's death, his father's constant attempts at killing Harry, or, by the way, Harry almost killing Draco in the bathroom. Some wounds are too deep, and those would qualify no matter how you tried to rewrite their ending. So, before I go further, I want to explain more about how I chose Harry's hypothetical fictional partner. This person, in my mind, needed to be a believable character for Harry to actually be attracted to and compatible with. They also needed to have a conceivable story that would benefit both Harry and the arc of the books, and there had to actually be an opportunity within the story that exists for the relationship to take place. You can find whatever fan fiction you want about Harry getting with Professor McGonagall or the giant squid, but you have to use fan fiction because there's no moment in the series that would have made any sense for that to happen. I wanted someone that you can right now go in during your next reread or just flip to these pages and say, oh, right there, Harry could have gotten with them right here. And the next two names I'm going to share meet all of these criteria. The first one is one that comes up a lot, and with good reason. It's Luna Lovegood. She's a supporter of Harry and what he believes in from the moment that they meet, and they have a kind of awkward meeting moment that can be used as a really fun introduction. She knows and understands him on a level that almost nobody else does and has a way of just blurting it out awkwardly. The fact that she can even recognize him at the wedding as he's disguised like polyjuiced as a redheaded kid that's supposed to be a Weasley cousin, like she knew him for him on the inside in a way that I don't think anybody else does. And they have the opportunity within the story with Slughorn's party to spark a romantic relationship if you wanted to. You wouldn't have to change like a single thing up to that moment. Even the cringy way he asks her to go to the party with him, to believe that they could have gone from that moment, just gone to the party together, had an amazing time, and they could have had just like an aha moment that there's more to their relationship than friendship and it's worth exploring. Would have been completely believable and conceivable. But the reason I don't think it would happen is quite frankly just how eccentric she is. It makes for a great character and an entertaining relationship with him, but I don't think it complements him in the way he needs a partner too. Harry needs someone who can bring him back down to earth when his reality is like spiraling out of control. Harry's reality isn't the same as everyone else's reality. They're living through the events together, but it's not the same thing. Even the ones who fight at the Battle of Hogwarts, they're making a choice. They are choosing to fight against evil to do what they believe is right, and doing so is supporting Harry. But Harry doesn't have a choice. He's been hunted since birth, at the top of a serial killer's hit list since before he could pick his own head up off of the floor. He hadn't even started doing tummy time when Voldemort was already planning his demise. The fighting that happens is because of Harry. And that's a weight that nobody else is feeling. So when that weight gets too heavy and he needs someone that can remind him where the ground is and why it's actually worth continuing to fight, I think that's something that Ginny's character is able to do very well. And Luna is kind of so far out there that her only realistic way of doing this would be to say something just so kind of off the beaten path that it almost shocks him back to feeling like the normal one. But he isn't normal. That's why he needs someone like Parvati Patil. Yes, you heard that right. So let me explain. We mostly know Parvati as the probably too into divination sidekick to Lavender Brown, and the only person who's been on a date with Harry worse than Cho. But before then, he got a glimpse of what could be an incredible match for his character. And it happened so early on, you probably forgot about it. In the first book, when Harry gets to Hogwarts and he has a flying lesson, you remember this. It's when Neville lost control of his broom, he fell off, broke his arm, and then Harry and Draco have a little squabble in the air over Neville's Remember-All, and Harry becomes Gryffindor's Seeker after Professor McGonagall sees him do a nosedive and catch it and not die. But what you don't remember is that the first person to stand up to Draco in defense of Neville was not Harry Potter. It was Parvati Patil. And when Harry reached the ground and McGonagall comes out to yell at him and everyone thinks that she's going to punish him, Parvati is the first to defend him to Professor McGonagall, even before Ron tried to speak up. This moment is small and it's fleeting in the grand scheme of things, but it set up the possibility of a character who was unabashed, unafraid, and willing to stand up to anyone, whether they be peer or authority figure, for what she thinks is right, which sounds awfully familiar to the exact type of person Harry Potter would end up being attracted to, after they weren't 11 anymore. And of course, there's the Yule Ball, where Harry is the second worst date of all time, only trailing Ron in that exact moment. But even after that experience, she still ends up part of the DA. She's still one of the students living in the room of requirement with Neville fighting back against the Death Eaters that are running Hogwarts. And of course, there's the battle itself. So she clearly kept those values past age 11. So the character is there as someone Harry would want to be with. There also would be some semblance, right, of a physical attraction, or they wouldn't have been at the Yule Ball together in the first place. Yes, it was played up that it wasn't his first choice and that the romantic interest started more on her side, but he was 14 and he had already been talking about, let's say, the level of attractiveness of the potential partners for this dance. He was not showing up with somebody that he didn't think was at least pretty. And I also believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was Dean, reinforced this by telling him that he and Ron were with the prettiest girls in school when they went to said Yule Ball. So physical and character attraction, check. How about the opportunity? Well, it happens at the same time as the opportunity I mentioned with Luna. Before Harry asks Luna to Slughorn's party, there's a scene, I think it takes place in the Great Hall, and this is the one where Hermione shares the news that she's going to be going to the party with Cormac McLaggen. I believe the text says something to the effect of the sound of a plunger when Ron stops making out with Lavender at this news. But again, it's a fleeting moment that you forgot about right before Hermione walks in. It's Harry and Ron meeting Lavender and Parvati. And the two share a moment a moment of mutual embarrassment on behalf of their best friends who can't keep their tongues out of each other's mouths at any point when they're within shouting distance of each other. That could have been the moment that sparked a romantic interest. And it wouldn't have taken very much. A shy glance, or like a tuck of her hair behind her ear, or some kind of subtle smile, a blush, or the cliche batting of the eyes. Any physical indicator of interest could have done the trick perfectly. And this moment would have been primed for one of them to suggest maybe giving their friends some privacy or just engaging in a conversation to distract from the snogging. Even if you still had Hermione come do her thing for the jealousy component with Ron and all of that, Harry could have taken that moment to ask Parvati if she was going with anyone to the party and if she'd like to be his date. Ta-da. You could even play off of the Yule Ball disaster as part of their shared history and kind of some funny dialogue. She could respond with something like, "Are you going to talk to me this time?" Or he could ask for a do-over or something just kind of subtle and cute, harkening back to that, but like in a playful way. And that could easily set up a wonderful night between the two of them. He could still have his detour for Draco and Snape in the bathroom, which is a weird sentence to say out loud, but otherwise, instead of having a great night with Luna, his friend, it could have been a great night with Parvati, his new girlfriend. You could cap it off with something like, "Well, that was better than last time," or "Why didn't you do this that night?" Or whatever lighthearted joke you want to poke at the, Yule Ball thing again before, like the goodnight kiss, and now you've got a romantic interest for Harry. Voila. I also like that they had the Yule Ball to play off of. How many first dates go horribly and people still end up together? It just becomes part of their story. They tell other people and they laugh about. She could literally poke fun at him about that for the rest of his life. And I personally like playful banter in a relationship. Again, where I think Ginny works really well with him. It's also believable because you have 2 years that have passed between those two Christmases. And we won't say all the way, but boys do tend to mature in certain ways between the ages of 14 and 16. On top of that, even at the Yule Ball, before he and Ron started being jealous awful dates, he and Parvati were actually having some moments. She did completely save him on the dance floor from looking like just a total idiot when he was not, brooding over Cho. She was actually a good hang for him. It's not a stretch to say, if given a chance to do it over without the Cho and Ron distractions, he probably would have liked her. And this could be part of their growth, the journey of coming of age and coming together. And if they did go that direction, I think it opens up some very interesting plot lines that could be explored that weren't. One, it's another strong female character that you can bring out of Lavender's shadow and into the forefront to be like a real component to the story. And also, she's into divination, like a lot. But that doesn't have to be weird. Not all people who like divination have to be Trelawney, right? Instead, it could be a whole different play around the prophecy. Harry tells Hermione and Ron about the prophecy, but Hermione hates divination and Ron thinks it's a joke. Ginny ultimately kind of puts things together more or less, but I'm pretty sure that kind of came in the breakup dialogue, so wasn't really the point. I think a cool way to show one of Parvati's strengths that she could have had is for her to piece together the prophecy herself. Dumbledore only told him that he could share the information with Ron and Hermione, but Parvati, being someone interested in divination herself, she could have suspected it, confirmed it, and deduced what it actually meant without him telling her. And this would have been an impressive bit of character building for her, and also could give him someone who would support him in a different way upon learning about it. She would really care about it and be emotionally supportive of him and even vow to help him fulfill it. And that could kind of be part of their bond together. Again, he gets support, but it's not really about the prophecy. His friends don't care about divination, and she would. And then you have the choice. She could go camping with them and add another skill set to the team, or agree to stay behind and be more active in fighting the Death Eaters alongside Neville, but for Harry. Not just because she believes it's right, it would be both. And she would be emotionally driven to do so. Not to mention her sisters in Ravenclaw. So she could be another way of exploring the Lost Diadem storyline, instead of what honestly feels like a forced Cho interaction in a jealous Ginny moment that we wouldn't need to have. I think it's all strong, and rather than having to change much of the story, anything you did with her character would only add and enhance the story that's there. And she would make a very suitable romantic partner for Harry, who's not, his best friend's sister, who was kind of a bit obsessive about him in her youth, and he literally saved from dying. To wrap it up, again, I think Ginny has the character traits that work really well with Harry. It's just the foundation of bringing them together has some flaws. In very limited page time, Parvati exhibits similar traits that complement Harry, and also new ones that could have been explored in really interesting ways, while allowing Harry to not break one of his core character traits: his loyalty to the relationship with his best friends, particularly Ron. He's already enough of a Weasley. We didn't really need him to literally marry the only girl in the family. So who do you think Harry should have ended up with if it wasn't Ginny? If you're watching this on YouTube, leave a comment. If you're listening on a podcast player, shoot me a message at Belated Binge across all social media, or belatedbinge@gmail.com. If you made it this far, subscribe and follow, and let me know that I should keep making these episodes.